Okay, we're going to talk about CP Villa a bit. I guess this is the map of the week for some people in RGL, and they may see it in pugs and scrims in the future. So, some people want to learn this map. First thing I'll talk about is rollouts. The easiest sort of standard rollout would be maybe you come this way then. You jump through here, get this pack, jump here, and then you jump to choke. Let's see if maybe you can hit that ramp slide. Set a sticky here, ramp slide that, and get yourself right here. So that could be a pretty standard rollout to try. There is, yeah, a faster rollout you can do through this doorway. There you go. Oh, I hit the wall. I'll keep trying it so you can see it in its full glory. Damn. I mean, it's fast. It's fast for sure. You don't need to air pogo. I guess you could just jump like that, I guess. Something like that would be okay. Maybe something like that. So, there's actually two equally viable routes to roll out. You can roll out this right side and just come through here. Call this library. So, this is one way to go. You can get this positioning up here, kind of take a more wide angle of the mid. A little bit more space to move around. Alternatively, you can roll out through the other side of the spawn. Come out the left, down this lane. You could also cut through the shutter, but then you just come through here. You run across the whole yard, come through the choke, double doors, and then you're in this position. You got good health pack access, good high ground access, and gives you a little bit more of an aggressive position. So both of these routes are equally viable, and I think people should experiment which ones they like more. So far, what I've been seeing mostly is people all kind of coming this way, out through the library, and they kind of just spread out in this direction, creeping their way up here. Soldiers like to jump off this and all that. The big thing definitely is going to be making sure your demo is trying to focus people off of these high ground positions, and that any pressure that you have, it's all in sync going forward here. Some high bombs are possible. One jump I liked was just off out of here. You jump off this wall, you can go deep into library. Some people have been jumping off like this and all that. The roof of the point is a really good late round position for a soldier in particular, because if people are on the point, they cannot hit you. You can just peek over the ledge, and it's really hard for them to kill you. And you do a lot of damage at this range, shooting straight down. But a scout can also do really well up there early in the mid. That's where I like to be, if I can. Just get up here early, maybe fight for it a little bit early. But yeah, the mid can be a bit rough. I think people are still trying to figure it out. One important thing, as always, is just making sure people aren't too isolated. I've seen some mids, people run their demo like through choke, and he'll be over here and the rest of the team's over there. It's probably a bit too split up, so gotta be careful about that. Other things I'd like to see people experiment with would be lurking in fountain. I think it's a good spot for a soldier to roll out this way. He can kind of isolate himself a bit just because he's not like taking fights actively, but he can sort of play this corner, and since a lot of people like to come this way and then sort of walk up towards the point here, you're getting free rockets in the back. You might get some nice picks. So that's a lot about the mid. Certainly the height is really good on this mid. It's one of those mids where if people are staying on the low ground too long and you can get control of the height, even just this bit of height on the point, that can win you the mid, because they're just going to be sitting down here and you have height over them. So that late mid positioning is often what can win you the mid. Another thing to note about the mid, it is fairly easy to flank. So you can roll people through here and they can get behind pretty quickly to come back in through doors, hit people in the side here. Your soldiers would probably have an easier time going for the long flank all the way through to library. this is an amazing flank because you can just cut off their exit completely. You know, obviously can be a bit risky because you're out of the fight for a bit of time, but if your team's winning the mid and you're behind, you can cut off their exits so well, and it's just absolute destruction because they can really only escape in one direction through here. So that's something to look for. And then one other thing to look for on the mid is, you know, maybe the lower can be useful for maybe a lurking soldier. A lot of good spam goes across here, actually, so be careful about the spam. You can kind of spam through here, maybe hit these back walls and all that, so just be mindful of that. And also, don't forget about this spot for a scout. A scout can climb a few things here on the mid and maintain that height advantage. Be really hard to hit, and just soldiers will land into your lap. So that's kind of what the mid's going to be like. Pushing into second. Well, one thing to note, this is a good spot right here because you have good vision. You can see library completely. You can see doors. You know, it's a bit obscured by the stall here, but you can see enough to see across if they're going fountain as well. So this spot is a power position for information. So you should pretty much always have someone spotting this. Besides that, all the routes are fairly viable on this map. So you can kind of rotate your heals around and poke and prod, maybe try and get people to take risks here and there. One really good play that we've been liking is to bring heals here and get some people to try to, you know, just fight this. Because if people try to fight you from like this low ground position, if you actually bust through, you have a really good angle to destroy them. And they can't really see very well into the door. So if you can bait people into this low ground, it can be really good. And if people are chilling like back here, you might be able to get healthy, you know, soldier or scouts through here to just rush them down, and then you can get behind. So there are opportunities to get behind. The introduction of this balcony may complicate things because the soldier will be a bit safer right here, and he won't have to retreat and isolate himself. He can kind of come back with his team, and he can still, you know, sort of slow you down. But if your demo's here, he can hit that guy really well off that balcony. So library can be a really good place to look for picks and maybe try to get people behind. The choke can be a bit difficult to just push dry, but you do have a couple things to work off of. You know, you can jump on this wall, whatever, and then there's high walls here for soldiers to jump. And you can kind of be hidden pretty well until you get like up to this corner, assuming they're just sort of chilling like at this angle as like their furthest forward spot. Because if they're just sitting like here, they won't see you approaching on that, and you can get in maybe as a surprise. Be mindful of traps. I've seen this trapped, you know, all this stuff can be trapped, so maybe a bit of spam here and there can help to alleviate that. But yeah, soldiers can do some high bombs off here to open it up. And then you've got fountain, which is really quite open as well, and they also won't really be able to see you very well. If they're holding really aggressive here, fountain's a really good spot because the rest of the team that might be watching the choke can't really help in that fight if it's at this angle. So this can be a really good spot, and then people can also just flood through here since it's so open. And it can also be really good for just sneaking up. If they're playing passive near the point, you can get all the way up to here before you even show yourself, so you can get in pretty far. Soldiers can jump off this wall, so they can go deep off of that. But yeah, lots of options. If you're trying to dry push this, I'd probably try to work choke and fountain, just because you have a little bit more space. It's a bit further away, and as you approach, you know, you can move up towards this mound and keep relatively everything in front of you. And this can be a pretty good spot to pressure up towards the point, or to split their team in half. So half their team's over there, and then half their team's over here, and then maybe you can isolate those people to get those kills. This point is also really good for demo spam because, you know, the demo can just lob over this and lob through here, and if they're just chilling right here, they're going to be catching those pipes. So it's a good thing to look for. One thing to note, you cannot jump over this. So soldiers that are bombing this need to be strafing around it. Which can make it a bit tricky to get in, especially if they're tucked way back here. But yeah, just something to be aware of. But yeah, you can really take over a lot of the height here by just pushing through the yard. There's a lot of stuff to work with, pressuring from this mound, and if you get them all bunched up back here, oh man, it's amazing for spam. One play I'll give you a tip on. If you're pushing on a massive ad, a really good play you can do is try to chase through here and take your Uber through the shutter, because a lot of times people are going to be playing near the point. The moment you're here, their exit is cut off. They're trapped. If they try to retreat, they retreat into you, Ubering and destroying them. If they stay there, you know, you collapse on them. If they go forward, they're also just stuck. So if they're ever overextended here and you have Uber ad, that can be a really good play to go through the shutter and cut them off. So look out for that one. But I suspect people will be adjusting their hold now that they can play on this bats, because this is a much safer spot to retreat from than the point because of the vulnerability of the shutter. So I suspect people will start shifting their heels up here more often. So just be aware of that. Lobby, I guess I'll let the time go through, and then we can talk about taking lobby and last. Come on. Alright.
Hey Scout, take a look at this.
So if we're going to be taking lobby here,
Eat my dust.
you can always just like bust through pretty much every door you can bust through. I haven't really seen lobby holds all that much. It's pretty rare. And with the addition of this entrance, it'll probably be even harder. These height options are really good. If you can take the time to just come over here and climb this. This would be a really good way to get in on maximum height up here. But rarely do I see lobby fought for. One thing to be mindful of, though, is that this is a very high ceiling, so soldiers can bomb through if you're not expecting it. So just make sure you have coverage of all the doorways. Soldiers might high jump through there, high jump through the shutter. Like, say, for example, you're all up here. A soldier could easily jump through the shutter and get right up behind you. So making sure you have people covering everything is important. Here, again, every entrance is pretty viable. If you're on massive Uber ad, I like the cellar because look how deep you can get in before you have to pop. If they're not covering it well, which most teams probably won't be because they haven't learned, this cellar is so good for Uber ad because you can get in almost to the point before you even have to pop. So it's a good spot to be, potentially, but obviously, you know, you are sacrificing some height. You're usually going to want to take this Uber in and then commit to one of the spawns, left or right. You could come through the point and then split. You could come up here and then wrap, because some people like to hold right here, and then you just come up right behind them and you just kill them all here. So that can be a really good play. There's lots of options for just sack plays since the entrances are so wide. Like, soldiers can easily jump through here. The shutter is very huge. Like, it's fucking enormous. Even this side you can kind of bust, so just trying to work every side can be good. Very important when you're pushing, just be careful about traps. This is a common trap spot. You know, the whole thing. There's not a lot of amazing sentry spots now that they adjusted this. So sentries aren't great on this last, which makes me a bit sad, because I always like to put out a sentry. Best sentry spot at the moment would be up here. But this takes a huge investment, and it's very risky to set up if your team is at disad, because you could get caught out setting this up. Other sentries you could set would be, you know, maybe like over here, but it's pretty easy to destroy. But yeah, it's a tricky last sometimes. The other thing is baiting the cap. You know, people are gonna come bombing around the sides and just flooding through here. So baiting the cap is very good on this last, because your demo can trap it up. They have to funnel through a little bit and get on this platform, and a scout especially can just jump on this hedge. It's very hard to hit up here, and easily rotate back to height. So those are things to look for, I guess. Talk about defending. As always, it's important to get information early. You could have someone spotting, you know, aggressively here, ready to jump out, a soldier ideally. You could maybe have a soldier peeking in here. Probably want at least one person spotting cellar, and then one person up here sort of spotting this. Your heals can be kind of ready to rotate to one side or the other based on the info you're getting. Alright, thanks for the raid. We're in the middle of a villa map review here. Pushing out of last. So, the lobby, you can kind of see everything. So, once you get people into lobby, you should know if anything's still in here. Probably want to get someone to clear cellar, though, because there are a couple hiding corners in here. And people could potentially go for back caps. Most of the back capping you're going to see is probably going to come from this right side. Because this is where all the corners are. You know, someone could be chilling right here, ready to rush last. So you got to make sure people are clearing this out. It's useful there's a window here, but even then, you know, people could be chilling like here, down here. There's a few hiding spots, so be very careful with clearing out this right side out of last. And then pushing on to second. The fastest route, of course, will just be up here to the top left, direct to the point. But since this is the best height that they may have, a lot of times you're going to see teams sort of stacked here. It's going to make it very hard to get through here because the spam is going to be very powerful. They'll be set up on positions like this, and it'll be hard to return damage on them. The shutter can also be really good to just get in really quick. But, you know, you obviously are going to be at the low ground. You're going to have to jump people up to the point. But if you do have, like, Uberat or something, or you're willing to go for an exchange, it can be good to bust through here and then just run up. Maybe they'd be unexpected. It'd be an unexpected push. So if you want to get in fastest to the point, it's going to be here and here. Like if you're chasing people out of second, I'd probably come through shutter. If you're trying to get cap time, I'd come up top left. But then there's an introduction of this new route here, which helps a lot for pushing out. Because previously, when this didn't exist, you know, your options were only sort of be at the height disadvantage to the point. But now this gives you a little bit of height advantage. It's pretty wide too. It also denies this spot that was previously really good for shutting down the shutter. So this might even be a decent spot for your combo to try to get through. But if you were going to do that, you'd probably want your demo making sure to lock down the other sides. Just momentarily. Once you get people in here, it's probably not going to be possible for them to get in shutter. But then you can start, you know, jumping people out here towards the point, and now the tables have turned, and a scout can jump across, you know, onto the mound and then onto the point. So this is also a really good spot to push out, and it could help to get your flank buff to make sure they can clear all this. Another thing I've seen people do is when pushing out of last, trying to get people behind this way. Sort of similar to Gully Wash. I've mentioned before that the map layout is actually somewhat similar to Gully Wash. This would be like pushing Big Door into mid when the other team is retreating choke or holding second. One thing that makes this even better than on Gully Wash is that on Gully Wash, the forward would be like, you know, sort of like right there. So they'd kind of be tempted to run straight into this. But on this map, the forward is over there. So the default rollout for people when they're spawning is going to be towards Fountain and maybe towards choke. So it's less likely you're going to run into resistance if you try to get people behind. So it could be an opening to you know, help you pushing out, maybe to make a play or whatever. Besides that, you know, as always, you want to lock down the chokes. If you're just sitting passively on the point trying to push out and just sitting in here, you're kind of boxed in. Similar to Sunshine, you won't have a lot of control over the chokes. So it's always more important to lock down the chokes first than it is to stack the point. Unless, you know, you're very confident they aren't going to push back in. But this map is very dry pushable because of that. If you're way back on the point and putting no pressure on these chokes, people can take all this space and do all the jumps, as I explained earlier. So it's something to watch out for. So then, yeah, when holding this, I do think I think this bat spot will be a pretty good spot to be safe with your medic, ready to escape. It'd be almost impossible for him to get caught if you guys Uber there. Whereas if he's top left, he could get caught through the shutter. If you're sitting on the shutter, he could potentially live, but your positioning's not great. If you're just in a stalemate situation, a passive hold would probably be, yeah, maybe your medic somewhere around here, near the point. You're going to want people, you know, getting info, spotting forward. There's a couple good perches, like soldiers can sit up there. You know, good spam here. All this kind of stuff. So, it's pretty standard. I feel like it would be pretty obvious where to stand. I don't know. Maybe that's just since I'm so familiar with it and I just got that intuition. But yeah. Pushing into mid, again, you have a lot of options. This spot is really hard to get through if their soldiers are alive because you have this blind corner, and if they're just sitting here, their rockets are going to fucking destroy you. There's also a crack they can shoot through above the door. If they have the original, they can easily rocket over this crack, and they can do like 80 damage rockets without even exposing themselves because you're trying to come wide around this because you want to avoid a trap, but you're literally going to be taking massive rockets against this back wall if a soldier's right here. So this is a power position for denying the doors as a soldier. You know, you could start here as a soldier until you spot them, then rotate, and then just fuck them with spam right here. If I was trying to get in with like a straight up exchange, I might come through fountain. If I was just trying to pop in, because this one probably gets you in the furthest. You're basically on the point as you Uber in, if you can get through here. And then if you're trying to sort of like dry push, or get people in, you know, clean to start distracting, this is a good one. Because if they can get in this way and start pulling eyes this direction, like your flank perhaps, then that's going to alleviate spam off of the other doorways, and that's going to make space for you guys to get in. They can get the info where everyone is, and then you get in. One important thing, your demo is probably going to want to spam people off the roof, since that's going to be a really good spam position for the enemy team. For them to spam down on you. And, yeah, I guess then you take mid, holding mid, you know, like I said, good spots over here, some of these perches around. And that's kind of it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to really look out for. I guess one other play that we sort of did that you might want to keep an eye on is sort of faking pushes, because you can rotate relatively quickly here. So one thing, for example, is we'd like fake that we're pushing here, and that might prompt their flank to try pushing fountain and doors, but we just easily just rotate back, and then we can kill whoever's trying to get behind, and then we can start pushing with picks. So you can rotate fairly quickly on this map, especially between these two doors, but even then, maybe it's not as fast to go from doors to library, but if you start library, since you can just jump off this, it's really fast to rotate. It's not as fast to come the other way, because you got to come all the way around with your medic to get on this. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that it's faster to rotate starting from library than starting from anywhere else. So that may make this a bit more of a default spot, also because you're further away from the spots they're probably going to be in. So the worst you'll have to deal with is some long-range spam and maybe one high bomb, but you're not going to be taking as much damage from the spam. So this is a really good spot for a dry push or trying to milk your Uber. Come in here. If you're trying to push these doors, it's going to be difficult to not pop unless you kind of have someone initiate from these sides to draw eyes away. And yeah, I think that kind of covers most of the map, I want to say. Just a quick overview for those of you that don't know the map too well. If you wanted me to define sort of like default like flank versus combo areas, I would say default combo would be sort of doors and like fountain, like the height up here, and default flank would be library. And I think it would be mirrored as well here. Default combo would be sort of holding the yard, and your flank would watch library. And then for lobby, I would say default combo would be sort of up here, and your flank would maybe keep eyes on these other ones. Default for last would be, I mean, you can try both, but probably default right, and then flank watches left. But it's all sort of interchangeable. The map is pretty well balanced side to side, so you can rotate people around as needed. So yeah, that's pretty much the map. Hopefully it helped.